December 7th, 1941, northern Malaya. As dawn breaks over the humid green canopy, Sergeant Arthur Collins of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders wipes sweat from his brow. The jungle hums with life, but in the distance, a faint growl of engines can be heard. He doesn't know it yet, but that sound is coming from the beaches of Kota Bharu, where Japanese landing craft are silently approaching the shore. For Collins and his men, the idea of Japan as a serious threat is almost a joke. Around the camp, they trade stories about short-sighted Nippon pilots and tin-toy tanks. Their officers, mostly trained for desert warfare, believe the jungle itself is their best defense. British intelligence calls it impenetrable terrain. The maps are simply blank where the trees grow thickest. But at 12:15 a.m., that illusion shatters. On the coast, Japanese Marines hit the beaches with perfect coordination. Floodlights flare, machine guns open up, and the sea turns white with tracer fire. By dawn, they've seized the airfield at Kota Bharu, hours before news of Pearl Harbor even reaches London. Within a week, Japanese columns are pushing down the Malayan Peninsula faster than any Allied officer thought possible. Their secret weapon: bicycles. Hundreds of them, moving silently, mobile, and lethal. Their tanks, once dismissed as useless in jungle terrain, rumble through muddy tracks that British engineers swore were impassable. In the village of Jitra, a British lieutenant colonel watches in disbelief as Japanese tanks crash through barbed wire and drive straight into his command post. By nightfall, British units are in full retreat. The roads are jammed with trucks, artillery, and terrified civilians. Then the tropical rains come, turning everything into a thick, sucking mess of mud. Collins and his men march through it, exhausted, their rifles feeling like lead. Behind them, they can hear the distant roar of Japanese engines and the chilling cries of "Banzai." The Japanese don't stop. They advance day and night, using the jungle as their ally. They move through hidden paths, ambushing convoys and cutting communication lines, often led by local guides. The once proud Empire troops find themselves surrounded in the very terrain they had dismissed. In early January 1942, the remnants of the British and Indian forces try to make a stand at the Slim River. General Percival, the commander of Malaya, declares this will be their line in the sand. But the Japanese attack at night, their tanks moving with headlights off. The defenders never stand a chance. By dawn, the British 11th Division is shattered and the road to Kuala Lumpur is wide open. Amid the chaos, officers burn their maps as morale collapses. As the Empire retreats, the myth of Japanese inferiority dies a muddy death. January 11th, 1942, Kuala Lumpur. The once grand colonial capital is in ruins. Smoke coils above the shattered train station as British convoys flee south towards Singapore. Locals line the streets, their faces a mixture of silence and defiance. The Empire no longer looks invincible. Inside a commandeered bungalow, Lieutenant General Arthur Percival stares at a field map. The situation is a catastrophe. Japanese forces under General Tomoyuki Yamashita, the Tiger of Malaya, are advancing faster than anyone can track. His veterans from the war in China use captured bicycles and looted fuel to keep moving, while British columns are hopelessly bogged down in traffic. Yamashita's strategy is simple: never give the enemy time to breathe. In the dense jungle, Sergeant Collins and what's left of his unit trudge along a muddy track. The heat is suffocating, and every snap of a twig sounds like an ambush. At midday, the first shots crack through the trees. Japanese scouts. Within seconds, automatic fire rips through the undergrowth. The Argylls fire back blindly. Fall back, comes the cry, and the men scatter. When the fighting stops, Collins counts fewer than half his men. They are cut off again. For the first time, the soldiers whisper the unthinkable: they are being hunted. Meanwhile, Japanese Ki-43 Oscar fighters dominate the skies, sweeping aside the few remaining RAF planes. The British Army, once a master of imperial warfare, is now fighting without air support, without effective armor, and without confidence. By late January, the last Allied forces cross the causeway into Singapore. Engineers detonate explosives, blowing a massive gap in the bridge to Malaya. The men cheer weakly, believing the island fortress will finally stop the Japanese. But from his command post, Yamashita is already studying maps of the Johor Strait. He gazes across the water and murmurs to his aides, "Singapore, the Gibraltar of the East. We shall take it." Inside Singapore City, the mood is surreal. Nightclubs are still open, and officers dine at the Raffles Hotel as if the war is miles away. But near the coast, soldiers dig trenches and civilians line up for rations. Rumors of massacres up north spread like wildfire. Then, on February 8th, the sky erupts. Japanese artillery and bombers pound the island. In the darkness, landing craft filled with Imperial Guards appear on the water. On the beaches, Australian and British defenders pour fire into the surf. The noise is deafening. For hours, the attackers seem to falter, but they just keep coming, wading through the water, shouting "Banzai!" as mortar flares light up the ghostly scene. By dawn, the Japanese have a foothold. Within 48 hours, they are 5 miles inland. Singapore's defences are crumbling. In his command bunker, General Percival stares at the reports. Ammunition running low, water mains destroyed. The city that was supposed to be the bastion of British power in Asia is falling apart. February 13th, 1942. Singapore is burning. Oil tanks at the harbour explode, sending black smoke thousands of feet into the air. Civilians run through the streets and hospitals overflow. In the western sector, Sergeant Collins crouches in a trench, his rifle hot. The Japanese have been pounding their position for hours. "Where's the bloody RAF?" a private shouts. There is no answer. Japanese troops push forward street by street, with snipers on rooftops and machine guns in shattered buildings. Allied defenders, British, Australian and Indian, are forced back into the city centre. At Fort Canning, General Percival gathers his officers. The facts are brutal. Ammunition is gone and the water reservoirs are dry. Some officers want to fight to the last man, but others point out that 70,000 troops and nearly 1 million civilians are trapped. After a long silence, Percival gives the order to open surrender negotiations. At noon on February 15th, a white flag rises over the British lines. That afternoon, Percival drives to the Ford Motor Factory to meet Yamashita. Inside, the two men face each other. Percival is stiff, his uniform soaked with sweat. Yamashita is calm. An interpreter breaks the silence. The general demands unconditional surrender. Percival hesitates, then nods. At 6:10 p.m., Singapore falls. That night, the British Empire suffers its greatest single defeat. Over 80,000 troops lay down their arms, marched into a captivity that few will survive. For Sergeant Collins, captured near a hospital, the war becomes a struggle for survival. In London, a stunned Churchill calls it the worst disaster in British history. In just 70 days, the myth of European superiority in Asia had been shattered. The jungle had chosen its new master. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more history, told from the ground up. We'll see you next time.